The year is 2024 and bands are irrelevant. You just haven't noticed. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Ministry of Guitar. I'm Utkarsh coming to you from Singapore. So, obviously, a little bit of this video is sparked off by Rick Beato's video on why bands are going extinct. But I want to get away from the world of bands for a second. I want us to think about something different that has been happening in general for the last maybe 30 years or so. If you think about technological advancement all throughout, take the 50s, 60s, 70s, it was all about going further and beyond. 60s, of course, had the excitement of space travel. People were going to go to the moon. You look at popular culture, you look at the Jetsons, everybody's going to have flying cars. It was a very forward-looking way of technology. And it kind of went on in that way. I would really say that technology was extremely forward-looking all the way through the 80s. Think about all the cars with all the buttons and everything. And then in the 90s, something happened. From a music standpoint, you can think of bands like such as Oasis, where they're not necessarily looking forward. I mean, till the 80s, it was all about more speed, more whatever, right? All the crazy antics. Of course, then grunge came and spoiled that party. But just to go a little bit beyond grunge, if you look at something like Oasis, suddenly they're recalling the Beatles. They're trying to capture back the spirit of something that has already happened versus just you looking forward, right? Look at cars. That's where something called retrofuturism happened, where you had all of these cars reinventing old cars. Volkswagen brought back a new Beetle as a very good example. Suddenly, what started happening is that at one point in time, new was better, looking forward was better, old was something, a path in the progress of going forward. But somewhere along the line, it became like, oh, no, there is a limit to how much further we can go. We have to go back to the past for inspiration. And this happened throughout. If you look at the expression of it today, there are many things that you see in today's world where the older, more analog way of looking at things is considered better, more boutique, more artisan. All of these words are extremely popular in vogue these days. You could make coffee from an espresso machine, or you could actually go and get the press and do all of that. I don't know how many of us can taste the difference. Some of us can, probably like some of us can tell about tone wood. But it's a much more complicated process versus something that could be easy. This repeats across things. There are certain writers who get a manual typewriter or something like a manual typewriter, or even just a keyboard that feels like a typewriter, which feels worse, just to kind of be a little bit more backward looking. So I'd like to thank the paid partner of this video, which is BetterHelp. As I've often talked about on this channel, the nature of today's world, hyper-connected, late-stage capitalistic, it comes with its unique, it comes with abundance, of course, but it also comes with challenges. And one of the better things that has happened beyond all the other things is that it has normalized conversations around mental health, because it used to be a challenge for many, but it was often quite taboo. And for this, it's also very easy nowadays to get that help without any barriers, honestly. And that's where really BetterHelp comes in. It's a very good resource. It's very easy to sign up. It's easy to design a plan with a therapist that works for you. And another good use case that I've seen is that it's easy to connect offline with your therapist as well if needed. You can do voice notes and stuff like that. For me personally, in the distant past, I used to be quite a skeptic of this entire therapy thing. But in recent years, particularly in my workplace and definitely within my friend group, I've seen the incredible amount of value that it has added to people's lives. So I am now very much an advocate. So check out BetterHelp using the link in the description. And my suggestion is, if you're on the fence about this, just cross over. So what has happened is that technology and human progress has made certain things so seamless and so smooth that people are seeking the complexity of a previous less efficient way of doing it. The coffee making is a good example, but you can find this in many, many different things, right? And no more can you find this than in the music world. Now, back in the day, making music was an extremely analog, extremely equipment intensive process. Firstly, you needed multiple musicians to play multiple things. Secondly, you needed to have a nice sterile environment in which you record it. So on and so forth. All of that used to typically go into the production of a studio, of an album. Typically, when a band used to get signed, they had to, first pay off the cost of renting a studio for them for a few days. Today, what has happened is you can argue about small differences about analog instruments and whatever else you might say, and real instruments and real people. But ultimately, almost everything can be done from the confines of a bedroom. Someone like me can have pretty much Logic Pro program pretty decent drums. I can program them myself if I want. I don't need to be a drummer. I don't need to understand it. I can get a pretty good keyboard part played out. I can record all my guitars and everything in a very sterile environment. Hell, I can even record my vocals in this room. Yes, there will be small differences versus the best vocal microphone. But for the purpose of the end user, the purpose of the listener, they will not be able to tell. It really comes down to the skill of the person. So, the setup where you need a multi-man or woman operation in order to create a good piece of music, or a complete piece of music, or a complete production has gone away. You don't need it anymore. Some places have adapted to this fairly easily. If you looked at maybe nightclubs or whatever the equivalent were in the 60s and 70s, they had to have real human people, right? Because there was something different about just playing a song of a crappy speaker versus having a real band pushing real air. But slowly but surely, DJs with ever better equipment and ever better techniques started taking over. So today, a live band is a bit of, unless you go to a pub or something, or a particular kind of place, but in general, for popular culture, for younger people especially, a live band is an anomaly. Because it's just not necessary. It is complicated to have a band bring all of the equipment. You have 6 different people to deal with if you're doing a live show. You may do it now and then for special occasions if you want to touch. You may hire a band for your wedding, but it's more of making life a little bit more complicated for the sake of it being special for that particular day versus it being the natural, efficient solution. And in that same vein, I think bands in general, for the purpose of creating popular music, for the purpose of taking music forward, I think that concept is dead. It doesn't need to be that complicated anymore. I would say that there is a need for multiple heads. So there were let me reframe what I'm saying. There were 2 purposes of having a band. If you think of someone like Guns N' Roses or anyone, I just took Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd. On one hand, you had different people playing different roles. You have a guitarist, you have a vocalist, you have a keyboardist, bassist, drummer. On the other hand, you have different creative visions, which combine together to create something that is greater than the creative vision of one person. Not to say that one person cannot have great visions. Look at someone like Bob Dylan. But in general, that was the purpose of a band. Now, the first part about needing multiple people to play multiple different parts and play them together, that's redundant now. You don't even need other musicians to record. We talked about everything that you can do with technology now. So that part is redundant. The second part of it, creative visions, I would say from a creativity, art standpoint, it is not redundant. But as I've talked about many times on this channel, the business model of popular music today is of making something that conforms to a certain template and then pushing the hell out of it through the right amount of marketing, putting it on Spotify, putting money behind it, whatever else it might be. Right? So it's no longer about creativity, creating the best art. It's about optimizing the product that is the next popular song, that is the image of your next popular artist or whoever else that you've chosen. It is about that. That creativity is not needed. In fact, creativity is probably coming in maybe ironically in the short form, in the TikToks and the Instagram reels of this world, where certain things are getting picked up. Some people are being extremely creative to come up with extremely viral musical moments, which then form a queue and become springboards for them to get onto the music money-making machine and the music industry. So what I'm saying is the 2 purposes of a band, which is providing a set of personnel to do a job, is redundant. And the creativity required of having multiple band members is easily substituted by this new process of finding what is the next big thing in music. So bands are extinct, as some people have alluded to. You can see it on the charts, the top 50. I had to scroll through. The only band songs that I could find was Linkin Park's Numb, because of course they're a lot in the news recently, and Coldplay's Yellow, which just seems to be an ever favorite. But these are 20-year-old songs. there are no new popular bands. The only one that I can think of, and when I mean popular, I don't mean popular amongst the guitar crowd, amongst the rock crowd. I mean popular in general. The only one I can think of from a band standpoint, which is musicians, not a bunch of singers such as Backstreet Boys or BTS or Blackpink. I'm talking band as in band of musicians. All the popular ones are from 20 years ago, and the only recent one that had any sort of impact was probably what's the name of the Italian band? Maneskin. That's the only one. And they're not that popular. It's not that you talk to an average person, they will know it. But of course, you talk to someone who's in the world of rock or guitar, you will know it. So the point of this video is that let's recognize that everything in life changes. There's a very interesting practice done by Buddhist monks, actually, where they make a elaborate not a painting, but it's a painting made out of powder. It's made on the floor. They make an elaborate scene. They literally make a very elaborate arrangement on the floor. It takes them days to make. And then they sweep it away after spending all the time making that work of art. And the reason that they do that is to remind everybody that everything is temporary, right? And so as much as you and I love this band, right, the great bands that we enjoyed, probably for the last 60, 70 years, you can think of so many different names, multiple geniuses coming together, creating iconic pieces of work. It was a particular moment of history where technology, mass media, when I say technology, I mean mass media, intersected with musicality. It was just that moment in time where it made sense for different sorts of musicians to get together and make something and become larger than life figures, because all of those factors intersected. But that was a very, very brief window. And I have to say, I think that window has closed. I think bands have been redundant for maybe about 15 years now. Probably ever since technology completely transformed the music industry, decimated it. We talked about that in other videos. And technology also decimated the bread and butter of the musician, the session musician, by replacing the session musician with just virtual instruments. So the band was this little nice sliver of extremely inspiring, a great moment in history that we really love because it is our lifetimes, we associate with it. But by no means assume that this was always how things were and this is how things were going to be. It just was. It was great. We enjoyed it. I think we'll continue to enjoy it. There'll still be specs. There'll still be great music outside of popular music for us to enjoy. Those bands will still exist. But the band, as a cultural force, as something that dominates the popular imagination, that's done for. All right, folks, I hope this was an interesting conversation, a thought starter for you. Do let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.